So over the past few weeks, we've been talking, our sermon series has been titled Unqualified. And it's about the idea that God calls unqualified people and he qualifies them in the process. Our bottom line for this has been that God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And we talked about Moses and how Moses told God, I cannot speak, even after God told him to speak. Moses said, I cannot speak, and God found a way around it. He sent Aaron to Moses so that Aaron could speak for him. And then we talked about Gideon, who was probably the weakest in his family, the weakest in his tribe. God called him to be a mighty warrior, to lead his people while Gideon was hiding in a wine press. The list, it goes on and on of people in the Bible that were unqualified, yet God still chose to use them. Last week Justin talked about the 12 disciples, how if they had to take a test on the Bible, most of them would fail. And that's the story, is that God never really, there were people that had qualifications, but more often than not, it was the people that didn't have the qualifications. Today, we're going to take it a step further. We're going to be talking about someone who wasn't probably just unqualified for the position that God was calling him to. He probably should have been disqualified. I made a little graphic for it that I changed just one word. So today we're talking about Saul. But before we get there, I want you to think about a company. This company, let's say it's a engineering company, right? Before employment, they require you to take a drug test. Now, Candidate A has no qualifications, no job experience, didn't go to school for engineering. He went to school in art or something like that. Didn't have the qualifications, but he passed the drug test. There was nothing that was disqualifying Candidate A, but he wasn't really qualified. Probably wasn't the choice that people would normally make. Candidate B went to school, got his bachelor's degree in engineering, has years of experience in the field, but Candidate B took the drug test and failed. Now that's an automatic disqualification for the job. We think they can't have it. They failed the drug test. That's kind of how I think of Saul. It's not only was Saul probably unqualified for the calling that he was given, but he probably should have been disqualified. Our scripture today, it comes from Acts chapter 9, verses 10 through 19. And we're going to get to all of it, but we're just going to start off with verses 10 through 14. So verse 10 reads, In Damascus there was a disciple named Ananias. The Lord called to him in a vision, Ananias. Yes, Lord, he answered. The Lord told him, Go to the house of Judas on Straight Street and ask for a man from Tarsus named Saul, for he is praying. In a vision he has seen a man named Ananias come and place his hands on him to restore his sight. Lord, Ananias answered, I have heard many reports about this man and all the harm he has done to your holy people in Jerusalem. And he has come here with authority from the chief priests to arrest all who call on your name. Now, if you don't know who Saul was, Saul traveled the Middle East. He traveled that area, persecuting Christians, throwing them in jail, executing them, all of these types of things. He was the opposite of a disciple. He was trying to get rid of the disciples. This probably to many people and to Ananias disqualified Saul, right? If there's one person that God shouldn't call, that God shouldn't use, it should be Saul. See, Saul, he failed the drug test. Like, he's doing the thing that he shouldn't be doing, but also Saul had some qualifications. He was a leader. Like, he had people that followed him. They weren't following for the right reasons, but he had people that were following him. He wasn't afraid to speak to people. But he persecuted Christians. He persecuted people of the way. And so Saul was on the road to Damascus, which is where this story takes place, when he had an encounter with the Lord, where the Lord asked him, "Why do you persecute me?" And Saul comes to this revelation that the thing that he was trying to kill, the truth that he was trying to kill, was the truth. See, Saul thought that the news of Jesus, the gospel, was heresy. And that's why he did what he did. And on the road to Damascus, his eyes were opened. And Jesus told him that he was going to go spread the gospel. Now, we all think about Saul and we know how the story ends. He becomes Paul because, like, we have the privilege of hindsight. We have the privilege of knowing that Saul is going to write all these letters to the early church, and they're letters that we still read today. They're letters that are in the Bible. We know that. But at one point, he was persecuting the people that he was going to become a disciple for, or going to disciple to. Like, the same people that he would have thrown in jail yesterday are now the same people that he's going to try to convert to Christianity today. The same people that he's going to lead today. Saul, in our eyes, Saul should have been disqualified from ministry. But in God's eyes, he saw the potential. He saw who Saul would become. He would become Paul. So we know him as Paul. We know that when the Bible is talking about Saul, we know who Saul is going to become. We know that he becomes Paul. Now, Ananias was thinking the same thing we were. It doesn't say this in Scripture, but when God first speaks to Ananias is probably like, who? Like, that guy? Really? Are you sure? And it's not just like he doesn't just ask who. He's like, are you sure it's him? Because I know what he does, and I know what he's done. And if we're talking about the same person, I think you have it wrong. They're good reasons as to why Ananias thinks Saul's not qualified. They're good reasons as to why he thinks Saul should be disqualified from the ministry. But I want you to go into the mind of Ananias. He's probably terrified to go speak to Saul. Like, what if what I'm hearing from God isn't what's actually going to happen? What if I go and I get arrested? What if I go and Saul actually hasn't had this revelation? That's where Ananias is right now. Ananias, he tries to convince God that Saul is worthless to him. That there's no way that Saul can be that guy. There's no way that Saul can be the one that God is qualifying. And even after Ananias says that Saul was worthless, God said Saul was worthy. And it's not something that, to be honest, it's not something that I understand. Like, why would God choose to use somebody that does the opposite? I don't get it. I still think about it. But I think so often we try to disqualify people. We try to disqualify ourselves from the thing that God is calling us to. We try to call ourselves worthless. We try to call other people worthless. And we try to convince God that what we see is better than what he sees. That's not the truth. God can use anybody. Saul's living proof of that. Saul, in our eyes, in Ananias' eyes, and even after Saul is called and he goes into ministry and he meets with the original 12 apostles, they kind of are questioning Saul's call. The people in this present area, the people in Damascus, the people in Saul's hometown of Tarsus, they're like, wait, I know what you were doing last week, so this can't be true. Saul has to go somewhere else. Paul has to go somewhere else to do his preaching. But I say all this because, I think each and every one of us, we have something that we think disqualifies us, that we think our past is too dark, that we think what I did last week, God wouldn't want that in his ministry. But the truth is God, he doesn't look at our past. He looks at our potential. So as I finish up here, I have one question. I want you to think about this in between parts of our sermon. What is the one thing from your past that is holding you back from the calling that God has on your life? I'll say it. I'll say it again. What is the one thing from your past that is holding you back from the calling on your life?